Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.
Hello, everyone. Nestor Licanto here again with another edition of Beyond Our Borders. And this month, we're going to talk about the current COVID quarantine policy in the Philippines and a little bit about next year's critical Philippine presidential election. Our guest is Professor Ranjit Rye of the University of the Philippines. He is an expert in public administration and political science. He is a consultant on policy and advocacy with the Philippine Congress and a fellow of the Octa Research Group, which is a group that the local media relies on here on a resource for comment on a variety of current affairs. Professor Rye, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and good day to all our televiewers.
All right, let me just start off with the COVID situation in the Philippines. Right now, of course, the country is in modified, enhanced community quarantine, but just came off enhanced community quarantine. Can you explain to us why the country seems to be struggling with the spread of the virus, and while other countries, it appears to be going down?
Well, I think it's a constant struggle with prevention, detection, and treatment. That I think that's the key areas where the country has been struggling. The particular surge that we're in is a terrible one because it's driven largely by the new variants. We have the B117, or at least internationally well known as the UK variant. We also have the South African variant here, and locally we've also mutated a new variant called the P3. All of these variants are extremely contagious, and they're likely to be the ones driving this surge. The surge has exposed really the weakness of institutions and systems in the country. We were on a downward trend since September 2020. But because of mobility relaxation, the poor implementation of minimum public health standards and protocols such as wearing of masks, social distancing, and a proper hygiene, we've seen a rise in cases. And the rise, unfortunately, has been exacerbated and accelerated by these new variants. It didn't help. The government took some time before they locked down. And right now, we're averaging around 5,000 cases in the National Capital Region and around 10,000 cases for the whole country. Now, just to give you a sense, sir, of how bad the situation was. Now, in January, we were averaging only 500 cases. Well, that's still huge, by maybe the standards of Guam or other places. But by March, it moved to 5,000 cases a day. So you can just see the magnitude, the scale, and the proportion as far as the surge is concerned. It's really, really serious. And government has been playing catch up ever since. So, what's the result? Hospitals are overwhelmed, lives have been lost, and livelihoods have been discontinued, and so this the economic and social cost of this is kind of very, very high. And have we seen the end of it? The answer is no. So we're seeing a slowdown. We're hoping it will become a trend, and we're hoping the next 2 to 3 weeks things will get better.
Yeah, Octa Research Group, and you can make a plug for your organization because it's been relied on heavily by the government and by the media. But you had recommended earlier this month to go to an ECQ. Can you walk us through the rationale, the reasoning behind that?
Well, first of all, we've been seeing this, tracking this pandemic since April 8th last year. So we've been doing this as a part of our public service. We're not being paid by anyone or sponsored by anyone. It's really an initiative of professors from 2 universities, the University of the Philippines and the University of Santo Tomas, 2 prestigious universities. Some of the members of faculty decided, let's get out of the university setting and focus on providing the public accessible data analytics on the state of COVID-19 in the country. And we made a commitment that we'll do it for free. We will be independent, and we'll do it as often as we can. So we've been doing it on a weekly basis since for last 12 months. And we saw this coming. It's so unfortunate. We saw this coming a month ago. we had a Feb 17 weekly monitor, and we were saying, it's going up. We need to do something. But see, government has to weigh things, and it's really a big debate between lives and livelihoods, the economy and dealing with the pandemic. So there was inevitably some delay in the response, but the delay in response caused the escalation of cases from a mere 500 cases to 5,000 cases, and it seemed that at 1 or 2,000 cases a day in the National Capital Region, in these areas called most commonly known as Metro Manila, the hospitals were already having a hard time with those caseloads. So the delay in response was what exacerbated this surge. So we're that kind of group. So we try as much as possible to work with government to provide them what we see is happening, and provide early warning for surges such as this. I'm sure that we're going to learn our lesson here, and we're going to work even more closely with government. And some of the things that we will eventually change, and we're doing it actually already, is already happening. Hospital capacity is being ramped up, and greater cooperation between civil society, the private sector, and government is already being realized. And of course, the long-term goal of vaccinating as many Filipinos as possible is the key reason. So this is the reason why we decided to suggest a stricter lockdown. We need priority one is not the economy. It's really preventing the surge from exacerbating. It's the priority number one, is reversing it, slowing it down and reversing the surge. So that's why we argued for a very strict lockdown, and I think government listened, but it was a bit too late. But things are going to get better, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.
It's not always easy trying something new. Sometimes you have to help your loved ones along. Nana is so used to her weekly trips to the bank that going online can be a little scary for her. But her grandson knows that banking online is safer and easier, so he's teaching her how to get started using Bank of Guam's online banking videos. Teaching is one way to show our loved ones we care, keep your family safe at home, and show them how to bank online. Find easy-to-use online banking tutorials at bankofguam.com or on our Instagram and Facebook pages. Bank of Guam, member FDIC.
Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.
You mentioned vaccinations. The government is now focused a little bit more on the vaccination process, but there are challenges. Can you explain what, in your view, are those challenges?
Well, like many developing countries, the challenge has always been supply. In the Philippines, herd immunity is estimated around 70 million individuals need to be vaccinated. So that's if it's a 2-dose vaccine, it's about 140 million doses. That's an incredible amount of vaccines that are needed to attain herd immunity. But right now we've vaccinated less than a few 100,000 people at the moment completely. When you say completely, I mean they have 2 vaccine doses already. The vaccines we're getting, not more than 5-6 million have come in. So we're very far away from the vaccination process. We're in the vaccination process because of supply issues. Now, another challenge is, of course, vaccinating in an archipelago like ours, 7,100 islands, and how to optimize the deployment of vaccines is always a challenge here, given the fact that we have weak institutions, limited capacities, and the reality that there are lots of cases still of COVID-19. See, the surge has complicated the vaccine process. We were in the midst of vaccinating our healthcare workers, then the surge hit. So now our doctors and nurses have to focus on the surge, delay the vaccine a little bit, and then by the time people were focused on the vaccines were already expiring. So this is the challenge for a country, just like most countries around the world, dealing with short supply and limited resources locally to deploy vaccines.
Yeah. How is the Philippines going to strike that balance? Because as you mentioned, the priority is to get people healthy, but also the economy is suffering. And so there are that aspect of the country wants the country to reopen as quickly as possible. So how does the Philippines strike that balance?
It's a challenging balance and to strike. Why? Because we're vulnerable to surges. The Philippines, because of the delayed vaccination process, will always be vulnerable to surges, and surges seem to be best at the moment. While it's a bit crude to argue this, best managed through really strict lockdowns. In a space like in the Philippines, like Metro Manila, where there's a density is one of the highest in the world. It's very hard to deal with a surge when it starts without a lockdown, and the lockdowns don't just cost lives, no, they cost livelihoods also. So it's a delicate balance, no? And but Octa is of the conviction that if we manage transmissions, and only if we manage transmissions, can we truly open the economy up. We have to solve the biology first before we open up the economy. So this is the primacy of life is important for us as a team, and that should be the basis for striking that balance. I don't know if I've answered the question. It's a complex question, actually.
Yeah,
how do you strike
absolutely.
the balance? It's a challenge for every country in the world. How do you do it? You want to open up, but you also don't want to exacerbate the pandemic to the point that thousands of people get sick on a daily basis, and hospital systems collapse, are overwhelmed. How can you open up an economy when you have 10,000 cases a day? This is a challenge. I think government is doing what it can to strike that balance, and Filipinos are resilient, people. We must and we will overcome this pandemic, but it will really start with us working together as a country, as a one team, and we've been doing that. There's sometimes we take our eyes off the ball every now and then. We become complacent and overconfident, but as usual, like all other countries, we will deal with this, and we will prevail.
Yeah, I guess the $64 million question, Professor, is when do you think the Philippines will have the virus under control?
Okay. Well, the question can be answered in many ways, but one way to answer it is, when do we have herd immunity, right? When can we have as many people vaccinated to the point that the virus begins to slow down and wither away? So that will be around 70 million vaccinations, and that is like two or 3 years ahead of us. So that's the situation, my friend. It's not pretty, but we're hoping that supplies will improve over the latter part of this year. The United States is going to finish their vaccination by July, so a lot of vaccines will be freed up. See, the answer is very hard the question is very hard to answer for developing countries like the Philippines and Guam. It's really a function of supply. If we have the supply, we can do it in maybe 3 to 6 months, most efficient rollout. But right now, we don't have any supply. So you need 70 million supply for 70 million vaccinations on hand. Then you can get herd immunity in 6 months, no? 6 months to a year, maybe. But now we can't answer that because it's impossible to answer that right now with the way supply is globally.
Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.
When making the new Kentucky Fried Chicken sandwich, people asked how I felt about burger places selling fried chicken. I'd say that's none of my business, just like making fried chicken is none of theirs. Get the new Kentucky Fried Chicken sandwich. It's finger-licking good.
Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.
Okay, Professor, I'm going to ask you to put your political scientist cap on now and talk to us about the Philippine presidential election is about a little over a year away. How critical is this election going to be for the country?
oh, this is the most critical, probably one of the most critical elections in the life of the country. We had a very controversial and colorful president, Rodrigo Duterte, and the big question is about continuity versus change. Okay, and it becomes even more complicated in the context of COVID. But democracy in the Philippines is alive, and COVID, I'm very sure, will not be an impediment in the exercise of democracy in our country. And right now, people are gearing up for elections. There's some dominant candidates coming out, but I foresee that it won't be more than what, 2 or 3 candidates at the moment. Given the paucity of funding and the reality that COVID has, given a challenge to everyone. So COVID is a big factor. It's a governance issue, and it will be an issue in the elections, how the government dealt with it. But that being said, the president's wildly popular in the Philippines. Very high trust and approval ratings, and continues to wield a lot of influence in government. So he won't be a typical lame duck president. He will exert a lot of influence, especially influence with regards to the anointed candidate for the next elections. So elections are it's on high gear in the Philippines. A little muted because of the COVID, but it's already happening. It's been happening for the last 6 months. Actually, people have been realigning, been building resources. Elections in the Philippines are very expensive, so an expensive exercise. So people are all mobilizing resources for that. So the top candidates seem to be the daughter of the president, who has not decided to run, then Sara Duterte. Senator Grace Poe, the daughter of former action star Fernando Poe, former boxing great and still boxing great Manny Pacquiao, okay, who's put his name on the list. Another candidate that is being floated is the mayor of the city of Manila, Francisco Isko Moreno, no? And so you have this cast at the moment. There are what you call this, rumors that the son of former President Marcos, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, is also interested to run. So this is the cast at the moment. How it will evolve is we have yet to see. But the surveys of May and June might indicate already who are the most plausible candidates as far as the presidential elections are concerned. Let's not forget, of course, the vice president, Leni Robredo, who might be trailing in the polls, but is still a viable candidate, national candidate that can rally, that the opposition can use as a rallying point. To not just to mobilize resources, but also support for the next year's elections.
Yeah, President Duterte rode, if you will, the crest of mass appeal. How much of an influence will he have on the upcoming election in May?
Yeah, as I said, he will have a tremendous influence. The person that he anoints as the candidate of the administration will have incredible support. Yeah, but it seems now, based on the last 2 quarters of polls. Octa Research is also a polling company. We also come out with regular public opinion research outputs, such as polls, and our last 2 polls indicate that it's while there is a front runner now, and that is the daughter of the president, mayor of Davao City, Sara Duterte. Her lead is not insurmountable. It's very competitive, actually. And if she decides not to run, then the competition is kind of tight. It will be very tight. She is right now, the consensus is around her, but not by very much. Maybe 10 points ahead of everyone else. Which, by the way, it's not a comfortable lead, really. And we believe that it's too early to say anyway who the front runner is. Things will change when people finally submit their official declaration that they will run. So the next few months are going to be dynamic as far as Philippine politics is concerned. Alignments are going to be made.
Yeah.
As you know, parties here are not going to be as strong as parties in the United States, for example. So it will be driven by personalities and leaders at the local government level. Right now, the consensus around the president is very strong. The support for the president is strong, not just at the national level, but also at the local government level. So if he decides to anoint somebody, he will have it. That person will have an advantage.
Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.
When making the new Kentucky Fried Chicken sandwich, people asked how I felt about burger places selling fried chicken. I'd say that's none of my business. Just like making fried chicken is none of theirs. Get the new Kentucky Fried Chicken sandwich. It's finger-licking good.
Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.
Yeah. I think President Duterte ran on law and order and on anti-drugs, the war on drugs. What do you think will be the key issue? You mentioned, I think, that the pandemic, the COVID would be one of those. What do you think will be the key issues that will catapult a candidate to the presidency?
Well, I think COVID is going to be a key issue. A second issue would be, and in fact, we ran a poll last January and February of early part of this year, and it came out that people are yearning for a solution as far as poverty is concerned. People are yearning for a solution as far as jobs are concerned. People are yearning for a solution with regards to the prices of goods and services. So those three issues. So the economy will be a key issue for the next election. Who presents the best picture, the most optimistic picture of recovery will have resonance. You'll be surprised that law and order is also still an issue, although it's down the line, but it's still a significant issue. So the COVID, the issues regarding gut issues such as food, access to work, okay, or employment, and inflation are going to be key issues for the next election.
Yeah. Final question for you. What do you think will be President Duterte's legacy when it's all said and done?
That's a hard question. There was supposed to be a base of economic growth, but that's completely decimated because of COVID. The legacy, I think, that he wants to cultivate, is the legacy of a strong government, and maybe that's the jury is still out with regards to that. A legacy of being a populist, pro-people government, that he wants to come out of this with that, framing, or that achievement. Many of his own policies will have lasting effects. I pity the next government, the next president, because he's going to inherit a government saddled with a huge debt and a lot of big government programs to fund and to continue. The president launched a very expensive populist programs like free education in college, which has affected a lot of people, and which is also probably the base of his own strong popularity and approval ratings. The president also expanded dole-outs, for the poor in the country, and provided a lot of state redistribution of goods and services. So while he would have wanted to have a legacy of economic growth and prosperity, he's likely not going to achieve anything there because COVID has decimated not just our economy, but the economy of the whole world. But he will come out as a president that has tried to use the state to redistribute goods and services to its people. Of course, there's the issue of human rights violation, which the opposition will use as a frame to make sense of or to picture this administration. So yeah, there are two sides of this administration. It's complex and controversial one. One side is it's gloom and doom, failure to deal with COVID, the violation of rights of individuals, a very violent war on drugs. And on the other side, you have a state that has tried to redistribute as much of its resources to the poor and privileging a very strong populist agenda. Some would even argue socialist agenda, as far as state distribution of goods and services are concerned. A pro-people, pro-poor administration. So these are the two images, contrasting images that seem to resonate as far as I'm concerned with regards to the current administration. And of course,
Right.
let's not forget a controversial, colorful personality of the president. I don't think this is an act. This is a one-time act. I don't think anybody can follow this. The Philippine in the history of Philippine presidents, he's very controversial, I think, and that will probably be one of the lasting images of this particular period in Philippine history.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight. Brilliant stuff. Professor Ranjit Rye from the University of Philippines and a fellow of the prestigious Octa Research Group. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, and stay safe, my friend.
Yes, you too, my friend. Please stay safe. I'm Nestor Licanto. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on another edition of Beyond Our Borders.
Beyond Our Borders is brought to you by the Bank of Guam and KFC.